Hello, everybody. Welcome in. We are 4 weeks away from the conclusion of the 2024 through 25 NFL season, the regular season. So I'm going to begin this video a little bit differently than I have begun previous videos. Before I recap the previous week and give my picks, I am going to discuss the current playoff picture a bit and how that can change over these past few weeks. So I'm going to do that right now. So I'll first begin with the AFC. And I will say, while some of the seeding is definitely still up in the air, the current 7 teams in the AFC playoffs, it would take a major collapse for anyone else on the outside looking in to get in. Right now in the AFC playoffs, the Chiefs and the Bills have both clinched their respective divisions. Both of those teams will be one of the top 3 seeds in the AFC. Even though they have not clinched, and it is up in the air whether or not they'll be a wild card team or the AFC North champion, you can essentially write the Pittsburgh Steelers in Sharpie as they are 10-3, and obviously there's floor is 10-7, and they're not going to be 10-7. At absolute worst, they're going to be 11-6, which obviously that'll be enough to get them in the playoffs. And then the other 4 teams are all 8-5. They are the following teams: the Houston Texans, who lead the AFC South by 2.5 games; the Baltimore Ravens, who are currently 2 games behind the aforementioned Steelers; the LA Chargers, who are eliminated from winning their division, and their only path to the playoffs is as a wild card team. And the same is true for the Denver Broncos. The Broncos currently behind the Chargers due to head-to-head tiebreaker. So on the outside looking in, the 2 closest teams are 2.5 games out of the playoff picture. They're both 6-7. Those teams are the Indianapolis Colts and the Miami Dolphins. Honestly, the Colts' best path to the playoffs might be winning the AFC South. As I said, the Texans would have to collapse for that to happen. They're currently 2.5 games behind the Texans because the Texans beat them twice. And the Miami Dolphins obviously are eliminated from any possibility of winning the AFC East. So the only path for them into the playoffs is for one of the 8-5 teams that are not the Houston Texans that I mentioned, the Broncos, the Chargers, or the Ravens, to collapse. And then the one remaining team technically still alive for a playoff spot is Cincinnati, sitting at 5-8, but they're eliminated from winning the AFC North, obviously, and they're 3 games out of a playoff spot in the AFC. With 4 games left, they're basically dead. Now, for the NFC side, there are 2 playoff spots that I think are very much up in the air. 5 of them, I think, are pretty much locked in. So, the Detroit Lions have clinched. The Minnesota Vikings, even though I don't think technically they've clinched, you can basically write them in Sharpie as they're 11-2 and have the Chicago Bears this week. More on that later. So I think their floor is 12-5, which obviously that's going to be enough to get them in. They're currently a game behind the Detroit Lions. Technically a game and a half because the Lions beat them head-to-head. But the Lions and Vikings play in the final week of the regular season. That game will likely be a 4:25 kick or the Sunday night game. So the NFC North is still very much in the play up in the air. The Green Bay Packers, although they can't win their division as they're 3.5 games behind the Detroit Lions because they lost to them twice, you can basically write them in as a wild card team. I know 9-4, that's a little bit more on the borderline, but I don't think anyone thinks they're losing out. And then the other 2 playoff teams that I think are pretty much locked in are the Philadelphia Eagles, who are 11-2, and the Washington Commanders, who are, or actually no, not the Washington Commanders. I take that back. So only 4 of the NFC playoff spots are of the current NFC playoff teams are locked in. So those are the Lions, the Eagles, the Packers, and the Vikings. So the other 3 spots, one of them is the NFC South. That is obviously going to be Atlanta or Tampa Bay. Now, Atlanta beat Tampa Bay twice, so they have the head-to-head tiebreaker. But Tampa Bay currently has one more win than Atlanta, and the 2 teams are headed in completely opposite directions. Obviously, Tampa Bay is rising, and Atlanta is crumbling. So I think most likely you're going to see Tampa Bay win the NFC South, and you're not going to see multiple playoff teams from the NFC South. And then another playoff spot currently up in the air is the NFC West champion. And so I believe all 4 teams, maybe not Arizona, are technically alive to win this division. On top of it currently, Seattle at 8-5, and they have a 2.5 game lead on Arizona because they have 2 more wins and they beat them twice. So I think Arizona you can pretty much cross out from winning that division. The LA Rams at 7-6, so they're a game behind, technically a half game behind because they beat Seattle head-to-head in Seattle, and they play Seattle at home in the final week of the regular season. So the Rams technically control their destiny, as far as winning the NFC West. And then, of course, at 6-7, technically 2 games behind first place because they split with Seattle. San Francisco, who was on a 3-game skid, snapped that last week with a win against Chicago. They're not out of it either. And then, of course, is the final playoff spot in the NFC. Currently, that's the Washington Commanders, who are 8-5. But it is on the board that it's another NFC West team in addition to the NFC West champion. Washington was on that 3-game skid before crushing Tennessee, but I think most teams would crush Tennessee. So if Washington kind of falls apart, looks like they did during that 3-game losing streak, it's on the board that both the Seahawks and the Rams, or like 2 of the NFC West teams get in, or maybe 2, this is much less likely, but if Atlanta somehow rights the ship, that 2 NFC South teams get into the playoffs from the NFC. So that's all I'll say about the current playoff picture. Now I will recap my picks from last week. After a perfect 16-0, a very poor week for yours truly. I had both the Lions and the Chiefs falling, and both instead won on last-second field goals, one of which was a doink. So go figure. Arizona beating Seattle was a very poor pick. They lose by double digits. As well as the Bears upsetting the 49ers. More on the Bears later. I also thought the Bills would comfortably beat the Rams. That did not happen. The Bills' defense did not get off the plane, which, very disappointing. And, you know, I thought the Titans would beat the Jags. They didn't. That's kind of a who cares pick, as well as Saints-Giants. But 6-7, overall, not a good week for yours truly. I know I need to be better, and I hope to start that right now. Now, before we begin, I remind you to leave a like if you enjoyed the video and to subscribe to my channel for more content like this. And if you want to be notified of future content, please click the bell icon. You can choose personalized notifications or all notifications, whatever floats your boat. Let's begin. My first pick, Thursday Night Football. I like the LA Rams to upset the San Francisco 49ers 27-24. Now, obviously, this is a huge game for both teams. As I said, the Rams 6-7, the 49ers 5-8. If the 49ers were to lose this game, they'd be 2.5 games behind the Rams because they'll have 2 more losses, and they'll be they will have lost both games against the Rams this year. The Rams have been battling injuries all year long, but they had a fully healthy team against the Bills last week. They have a fully healthy team again this week. And last week against the Bills, I think we really saw what this offense can be when it's clicking and everyone's out there with Stafford, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, a really solid offensive line, and Sean McVay as the play caller. San Francisco, obviously a down year for them. I don't think anyone thought they would be 6-7 through. Oh, wait. I don't think San Francisco, it's obviously been a down year for them. I don't think anybody thought they would be 6-7 through 13 games. I know they beat Chicago pretty handily last week. I think that right now looks like an outlier. I can't unsee the previous 3 weeks. I just think Chicago's terrible and the Rams are good. I know the 49ers in years past have owned the Rams, but sneaky little fact, the 49ers have lost their last 2 regular season games against the Rams, and I know one of those was last season when they were resting their starters. They lost 21-20 at home, but they played the Rams in week 3 this year, and they lost that game. And in that week 3 game, I know the 49ers didn't have Christian McCaffrey, but I'm pretty sure they had Jordan Mason. Both of their running backs are on IR for this game. The Kansas City Chiefs are 4-point favorites on the road against the 3-10 Browns, who've been eliminated from playoff contention, but have been a little bit frisky since Jameis Winston has been their starting quarterback. They played Denver pretty tough. They upset Baltimore at home. They upset Pittsburgh at home. They laid an egg against the Chargers and the Saints. But I don't think this Browns team is necessarily a team that the Chiefs are going to walk over, especially considering the way the Chiefs have won some of these games over the past few weeks. I know the Chargers are a good team. The Chiefs beat them in a close one, but the Chiefs also went to the wire with the Panthers. They went to the wire with the Raiders. Honestly, I just don't see this Chiefs team blowing anyone out until they have to / want to, and I don't think that's going to be in any game in the regular season. So I do like the Browns to cover the 4-point spread, but the Chiefs just seem to have that dark magic this year. So I'm going to pick them to win this game 24-23. The Chiefs defense, since losing Jalen Watson for the year, their secondary has been a little bit vulnerable. So I think their second cornerback can be exploited, but Jameis Winston will, just because he's Jameis Winston, he'll give the Chiefs a few chances at interceptions. I have to think they'll come up with one of them. And the Chiefs need to win this game to stay on pace to lock up the 1 seed early, because they have a stretch coming up where they play 3 games in, actually, I think this is the first of 3 games that they will play in 11 days. So this is still an important game for them. I think that they will play with their food a bit, like they've done with basically everyone this year. But at the end of the day, I don't see them dropping this game. The Houston Texans are a field goal favorite at home against the 6-7 Miami Dolphins, who are basically in must-win territory for the rest of the season. And I think that line is perfectly priced. I see the Texans winning this game 24-21, maybe on a Kaimi Fairbairn walk-off field goal. I just think the book on the Dolphins, everyone knows it at this point. They clobber the worst teams in the NFL. I thought they clobbered the Jets last week. They didn't. They went to overtime with them. But against the good teams, especially on the road, away from the comforts of Hard Rock Stadium, whether it's by 28 or by 3 points, They never win. I know they beat the Rams a few weeks ago. That seems to be a bit of an outlier. They lost to the Bills twice. They got blown out by the Packers. This next one is going to be my lock of the week. I don't care what the spread is. Ravens crush the Giants. The Ravens, as I said, they're 8-5. They need to keep winning for seeding purposes, and I think the Giants at this point are pretty much in tank mode. I think it'd be better for them to just lose out. As I said, the Ravens, they're coming off a bye and a home against the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, Lamar Jackson, he's only lost twice in his career against NFC teams. Weirdly enough, one of those losses was against the Giants 2 years ago when the Giants were actually good, and the other loss was against the Philadelphia Eagles last week. But this is the type of game where the Ravens, they look awesome. They, against an overmatched opponent, they just crush them. Commanders at Saints is up next. The Commanders are a touchdown favorite on the road. I think that's perfectly priced. I think Washington wins by a touchdown, 24-17. I know Washington had the 3-game skid. At that time, I thought that Washington was looking like they were a bit dead, especially after they lost to the Cowboys at home. But even though the Titans are terrible, they did crush them, so I don't think they're dead. I don't think they're a championship contender, but they should beat a really bad Saints team that, without Taysom Hill, who went out for the year a couple weeks ago, can't move the ball at all. I think this is the type of game where the Commanders get a, no pun intended, commanding lead, and the Saints score a few touchdowns in garbage time. Enough garbage time touchdowns to make it a 7-point game, a 7-point final. I like Carolina to beat Dallas at home this week. I think they beat them 24-20, covering the 2.5-point spread. Carolina, even though they haven't come away with wins, has played really well the last few weeks. I know Dallas had that little 2-game win streak. I don't think they're a good team at all. I know they beat Washington, who's currently a playoff team, but that was just such a weird game with all of the special teams craziness in the fourth quarter, and they beat the Giants at home by 1 score. Lost to the Bengals at home last week, and I don't think they're a good team either. I think that the Panthers, the way they've been playing, are due for a win. The Panthers are at home, and for all those reasons, I think 24-20 Carolina. This next one is kind of a throwaway game between two teams who I think both have been eliminated from the playoffs at this point. I like the Jets by 10 over the Jaguars. Obviously, both of these teams are really bad. Neither of these teams have a chance at the playoffs. It'd be in both of these teams' interests to lose games, but I think that the Jaguars are more likely to acknowledge that than the Jets, just because I think Aaron Rodgers, even though he's a complete shell of himself, he might be one of the 3 worst starting quarterbacks currently in the NFL. It's close between him and Will Levis and Kirk Cousins. I think he's going to want to win some games down the stretch, which will hurt their draft position. I don't know if he's coming back to the Jets next year. But the Jaguars' defense is terrible. They're going to be starting Mac Jones again. I don't think the Jets have a big advantage at quarterback in this game, surprisingly. I suppose that really goes to show how bad Aaron Rodgers has been. But the Jaguars' defense is one of the worst in the NFL, and I think that the Jets will probably move the ball on them a little bit. I don't know. So I'll say Jets 24, Jaguars 14. This next one is also kind of a throwaway game, but a much easier pick. Cincinnati at Tennessee. The quarterback matchup here is Joe Burrow versus Will Levis. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. I like the Bengals. 30-20. It doesn't seem like the Bengals are able to play well on both sides of the ball in any given game. I know their offense has been their strength all year. Their defense has been porous. in a game, let's say the Giants game in week 6, when their defense played really well. Their offense really didn't. I think they scored 17 points in that game, so I don't think they'll blow out the Titans. My guess is they get a big lead in the second half, and the Titans claw back in it to make the final score look closer than the game actually was. The Titans lost to the Mac Jones-led Jaguars at home last week, so obviously they're just completely DOA. This next one is obviously the game of the week. I think it's going to be very high scoring. I think that the Lions beat Buffalo and extend their win streak to 12. Now, I believe that Josh Allen should be the league MVP. The production he's putting up this year is crazy. I think, nobody put it on this Bills team, I don't think, to be anything close to 10-3. I think a lot of people had them closer to 7-6. I thought they'd be 8-5 at this point in the year. And I think Josh Allen is the main reason why the Bills have been as good as they have been. However, I don't think this Bills defense matches up with the Lions offense at all. The Lions have a huge physical interior to their offensive line, and I think those types of teams are the ones that tend to give the Bills trouble. You saw the Bills in week 4 against the Ravens, couldn't stop them. You saw them, of course, last week against the Rams, could not stop them. Underrated, because I don't think a lot of people saw this game, but in week 9, when they played the Dolphins at home, they only forced one punt. They could not stop the Dolphins in the second half. Now, they won the game in spite of that, but that had nothing to do with their defense. So, I think Josh Allen will keep the Bills in this game, especially considering the Lions have a lot of injuries on defense. I don't think that the Bills will put 42 on the Lions because I think they're really well coached by Aaron Glenn. They will be able to make some plays and get some stops. And I just think this Lions offense is going to do whatever they please against the Bills defense, which may or may not include turning the ball over or getting stopped on 4th down. Next up is a match up between two teams that as I currently discussed, are in the AFC playoff picture. One of them's in a playoff spot right now, and the other team is in the hunt on the outside looking in. I like the Broncos 24-17 over the Colts. I expect this to be a low-scoring game. Obviously, the game's in Denver, so advantage Broncos. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. Both teams have very good defenses that I think will be able to slow the other team's offense down. But I think the Broncos' offense is much better than the Colts' offense. Bo Nix, I honestly think, okay, maybe the offensive rookie of the year should be Brock Bowers. But if it's not Brock Bowers, if it's going to be a quarterback, I think the offensive rookie of the year has to be Bo Nix. Overall, the Broncos' offense looks much better than the Colts' offense. I like Shane Steichen as a coach, but he's not better than Sean Payton. For all those reasons, I think Denver wins here. Probably covers the 4. I like the Arizona Cardinals by double digits over the Patriots at home. I know the Cardinals are on a 3-game skid, 2 of those losses to the Seahawks. 2 of the losses, however, one to the Seahawks, one to the Vikings. Not last week's loss to the Seahawks at home, but the 2 weeks before that. 2 very close losses. They had their chances in both of those games and blew them, but before the 3-game skid, they had a home game against the Bears, a home game against the Jets. At home against the worst teams in the league, Arizona has looked good this year. I think they'll look good at home against the Patriots. The Patriots, as I've said, they have Drake May, a promising young rookie. They really don't have anything else. Steelers have not won in Philadelphia in 60 years, crazily enough. I think they're like 0-10, 0-11 maybe in their last 10 or 11 games there. and I think that losing streak continues. However, the Eagles being favored by 5, I think that that's too much. I think that the Eagles win a low-scoring game at home. So, I just want to talk about the Eagles for a minute. They beat the Ravens a few weeks ago. They've blown out some teams on the road. At home this year, I think they've been a little bit shakier. Last week against Carolina, had Xavier Legette not dropped a wide open touchdown last week, they would have lost that game against the Carolina Panthers at home. On top of that, it seems there's some turmoil in the locker room with A.J. Brown. Saquon Barkley's been unbelievable, but Jalen Hurts, his passing has left much to be desired this year. A.J. Brown, it seems like publicly took a shot at him, and I think there could be some stuff boiling there. In spite of that, I think they will win this game. A lot of respect to the Steelers and how they've been able to get to 10-3 this year, especially considering that I don't think many, including myself, believed in their quarterback position before the beginning of the year. Russell Wilson has played well, but I just think the Eagles are a better team than the Steelers. Undercard to Steelers-Eagles, the Buccaneers face the Chargers. The Chargers are a field goal favorite at home. I'm going to make this my upset of the week. I think that Tampa Bay wins this game. As I said earlier, Tampa Bay is trending up since they've gotten Mike Evans back. They've won 3 in a row. I think the Chargers are good. They're well coached. However, I think the Bucs defense matches up pretty well with their offense. The Bucs defense, their weakness is on the back end, and they're very stout up front against the run, which is what the Chargers want to do. The Chargers want to run the ball. They don't throw the ball downfield very much. And we've seen with some AFC teams, the week after they lose a close one against the Chiefs, they often lose the following week at home to what we think is an inferior opponent. We saw it with the Ravens earlier this year. After losing to the Chiefs by a toe, they lose a home game to the Raiders, weirdly enough. Cincinnati. Now, the Commanders are better than the Bengals, but at the time, that wasn't very obvious. After the Bengals lose to the Chiefs on a series of errors, including a taunting penalty, a fumble return touchdown, a defensive pass interference, by 1, they come home and lose to the Commanders in a game where I don't think they forced a single punt. So I think that might happen to the Chargers this week. So put me down for a Buccaneers upset win, 27-24. Next up on Sunday Night Football, the Packers at 9-4 visit the Seahawks at 8-5. Two teams currently in the NFC playoff picture. The Packers are a field goal favorite on the road. I think Seattle upsets them. I like Seattle 23-20. I like what Seattle is going this year. I think Mike Macdonald is doing a really good job. I know that that they had that skid in the middle of the year, but they are on a 4-game win streak. 3 of those 4 wins against divisional opponents, 2 of those against the Cardinals, 1 against the 49ers. They are back at home this week. An interesting fact, the Green Bay Packers have lost 4 in a row in Seattle. They have not won in Seattle since 2008. I think that losing streak continues. Next up, Monday Night Football. So, I'm hesitant to ever think the Vikings are going to blow their opponent out even when they should. I know they won by 3 touchdowns a week ago against the Falcons, but the score's a little deceiving because that game was 21-21 going to the fourth quarter, and then, of course, the Vikings reeled off 21 straight points. They pulled a fumbled a kickoff. They then threw an interception, and before they knew it, they were down 21 points and the game was over. So I'm tempted to think that the Bears cover the 7-point spread here, but I don't. I think the Vikings win handily 31-17. Chicago, to me, at this point, I thought that the Matt Eberflus firing would give the Bears a bit of a bump. They had lost 3 in a row. 3 very close games, actually. I think multiple of them due to coaching blunders against 3 of the 4 best teams in their conference. 3 losses by a combined 7 points. And I thought they were playing a much, the 49ers were a huge step down in competition from the Packers, Vikings, and Lions. I thought Chicago, with the bump, would beat the 49ers, and I thought they would be better for that Eberflus firing. Nope. I don't know how many people watched the Bears-49ers game last week, but at halftime, the 49ers had 300 yards of offense. The Bears had less than 10. This was a 49ers team that had lost 3 in a row, had been blown out in back-to-back weeks. The most they had scored since their bye was 20 points. And I'm pretty sure 38 points, which was what the 49ers finished with, was their season high. Yeah, Chicago, to me at this point, is as DOA, if not more DOA, than that Falcons team the Vikings played last week. This game might be close going to the fourth quarter, like last week, but I don't see this game. I don't see the final score of this game. I don't see this game coming down to the wire much at all. I think the Vikings beat the Bears comfortably. Sam Darnold, by the way, is playing super well. Last week he had 5 touchdown passes and no interceptions. 5 touchdown passes for Sam Darnold in 2024. I think Sam Darnold, honestly, should be the comeback player of the year. I think he plays really well this week. I like the Vikings by double digits. 31-17. By season's end, the worst primetime game of the year, as far as a quarterback matchup standpoint, will probably have been Will Levis versus Tyler Huntley in that Week 4 Titans-Dolphins Monday Night Football doubleheader undercard game. This is another Monday Night Football undercard doubleheader game. And if Will Levis versus Tyler Huntley stands as the worst primetime quarterback matchup of the year, then this is easily number 2. The quarterback matchup for Raiders-Falcons is Desmond Ridder versus Kirk Cousins, who, for the last month, has been the worst starting quarterback in the NFL. Over that stretch, no touchdown passes, 8 interceptions. Not good. The Falcons are on a 4-game losing streak. They got blown out by the Vikings last week. Got absolutely crushed against the Broncos a few weeks back. Didn't give up an offensive touchdown against the LA Chargers, but lost. And they lost to the DOA Saints. So the Falcons look like a dead team walking at this point. And the Raiders, of course, just stink. So the Falcons are 4.5-point road favorites. I don't think Atlanta should be 4.5-point road favorites over anybody. I do think Atlanta probably wins this game. I'll just say 13-12. But my goodness, this is going to be an awful, awful game. And I don't know. This is probably going to be the worst rated primetime game of the year. I'll give that take. And that will be all for today. I remind you to leave a like if you enjoy the video and to subscribe to my channel for more content like this. And if you want to be notified of future uploads, you can click the bell icon. You can choose personalized notifications or all notifications, whatever floats your boat. Thank you again for tuning in, and I will see you all again real soon.